Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals. With me is my co-host, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, and we are in episode 695. And guess what? We get to talk about an Arizona Cardinals win. They defeated the New Orleans Saints 20-13. Sunday afternoon in New Orleans, opening the season 1-0, their first season opening win since 2021. And, it felt good, didn't it?
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, you have an interesting game where they clearly were not trying to do too much and then show too much and kind of kept things fairly basic, and then they somehow almost let them back in the game, but then pulled out a win. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of all you can ask for in games of this, caliber. And that's really, that's the difficult part of all of this, right? How much effort and time and things of that nature you're looking to see them put in it and see them really get out of it. So it was almost like they were playing like, hey, let's not show anything too much. Let's be really vanilla and let's get on to Carolina.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about. We want to talk about in this game, was it a good win or was it a bad win? And then other takeaways and observation. We'll talk about as well the player standouts, the player duds, and then kind of look at what are any concerns that we had from the game combined with what we saw around the NFC West. So let's talk about first, good win or bad win. In the end, 20-13, road win. They covered the spread, good teams win, great teams cover.
That's right.
But fans didn't come away from that feeling good. Would you say it's a good win or a bad win?
There's no such thing, in my opinion, as a bad win, right? So you just sit back and look at it and you go, well, they need to improve this, and if they're going to beat good teams, they got to do this. But then you kind of take it as a whole and you go, again, you look at it and you go, okay, well, they really, they weren't showing anything. Everything was very vanilla and basic. I mean, this was almost like a preseason game script. And so you look at it from that point of view and you go, okay, it was good enough to get a win on that day, and that's all that matters. I think there was a couple concerning things that we'll talk about, but one of them being that, not even concerning, but, we talked about this in our group chat. Like, the reality of it was that they also were wildly out of shape, especially along the defensive line. I mean, Josh Sweat, Calais Campbell, Dalvin Tomlinson, like, these guys looked gassed, and it shouldn't be overly shocking. They played, I think, as much as us in the preseason. So,
that is true. Tomlinson played a handful of snaps.
I think he got
Calais
6.
And Sweat played 0.
Yeah. And so, and even Darius, right? Like, Darius didn't look fresh. So, it is what it is. You look at it and all of that, it just comes down to how they move forward, and that's how I kind of look at it, because again, I just thought it was an incredibly vanilla game.
And I would describe it, I mean, you're correct. I can't say, I don't think you can really say that any win is a bad win. But maybe you can probably find one there where you think that it's going to be, and it should, and you win, but it's lucky. all wins are at some level good, but it also wasn't. It wasn't what you call a good win because you didn't come away feeling good from it. But it was, at its core, it was an ugly win. It was 100% just an ugly win, and I was thinking about this after the game and talking to my son about it, and was like, you know, New Orleans forced an ugly game because they knew that was the only way they could win, right? They had to get the ball out quickly, so it means it reminded me, honestly, of the way. Remember back when Colt McCoy played and he was against the Rams, and the Rams, it was get the ball out, get the ball out. There's in 2022, and they couldn't do anything. They couldn't move the ball at all because it was just get the ball out, and all they did was sit back, and the goal was don't let them do anything over the top, and we'll just tackle them. And that's kind of the way it would happen. I think purposely the Saints tried to play not a dirty, but an ugly game because it was the only way that would possibly derail the Cardinals. And by the look at the final score, they accomplished what they wanted, even if they couldn't quite execute down the stretch.
Yeah, and they got out of it, and it was overall just one of those games where you're like, oh, just get to the next game at this point. Like, they seemed not overly enthused, and you look at how the game was played, and there were some things that you can tell that they had, kind of highlighted as like, this is what we want to see, because we know in this game it's probably not going to hurt us. And that was interesting to me, because again, it was almost like they had this as like their real preseason warm up.
Yeah. I'd like to credit Brandon Staley. Now, we did have the stat going in that Kyler Murray was 0-3 against Brandon Staley. He finally got that monkey off his back. But I think I wasn't impressed by the Saints offensively. I wasn't super impressed by Spencer Rattler. They had a game plan that was to protect him, to get the ball out quickly no matter what. And aside from a couple of plays on the run against Alvin Kamara, they did pretty well of slowing the run game. But I think what people underestimated would be the impact of Brandon Staley on that defense. And I will say that, they might be in more games than most would expect them. Like, they could be like the Cardinals were 2 years ago, that good, bad team.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was thinking too, that this is a team that just doesn't really look like they're that talented, but they play really hard. And the reality is they just have no depth. I mean, more than anything else, it's something that we talked about with the Cardinals in that first Gannon season, right? Like, obviously, when you don't have a quarterback for most of the season, that makes it tough. But to have no depth, oh man, that's so bad.
Yeah, and credit to Staley, because they did play physically against the run. They did pressure Kyler Murray. They got to him a lot. I think I saw the stat that came from PFF or Pro Football Network or one of those sites, and Kyle Rudegaard noted that the time to pressure was 1.63 seconds.
Yeah, it was, and that's what I was, and that's the hard part, right? So I was actually talking with somebody about this. There's a stat, I call it a fetish for anybody, right? Like, anybody can find what they're looking for to make their arguments, right? And so you go to PFF, right? And the time to throw stat for the game makes it not look great for Kyler, right? So his time to throw was like 3-point-something seconds. And so if you use that, 3.19 seconds. If you use that, that's like, why was his ADOT so low, right? But if you use the actual NFL sight. He was fourth fast. He had the fourth least amount of time to throw at 2.48 seconds. Yeah, his average completed air yards was in line with the other ones, kind of right above him. So that's the hard part, right? Like you can create whatever narrative from this game that you want to create, and that's what makes things difficult. Unquestionably had the longest completed air distance throw of the week, 51.4 yards. That beautiful throw to Marvin Harrison, but he was one of the lowest in yards to the sticks throws. But the guys above him are all guys that other fan or the Cardinals fan base are sometimes like clamoring over, right? Like Joe Flacco, Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud, Aaron Rodgers. Those guys were all like dinking and dunking less than him. So that's the thing, is there's, like I said, there's just kind of, you can find a stat for everybody that makes you happy, or mad, or whatever you want to be in that instance, right? But the reality became that the pass protection was not what the Cardinals want it or need it to be, and that was one of the biggest concerns. And I'd say on the flip side, but I thought the biggest like concern coming out of this game, as you kind of intimated at, was the fact that you weren't able to run the ball. And so again, was that because the designs were so vanilla? Their rushing yardage looked a lot better than it was. If you and I talk about that all the time. One big run, a la the Trey Benson 50-yard rush, changes everything, or 52 yards, excuse me. Because they go for 146 yards as a team in that game, and everybody's like, hey, they had another, almost hit 150 yards, had over a 5-yard per carry average. But it's like that was basically one run. That got them over the 100 yards. That all of that is just like what you look at and you go, okay, there was some good and there was some bad.
Well, and if you take the way I looked at it was that, well, they averaged 5.4 yards per carry, but the 52 yards accounted for a third of the team's rushing attempts. So he ended up having 7 carries for 17 yards. That's about 2.5. Connor had 12 for 39, just a little over 3. So it was tough sledding.
But I also thought, you mentioned Staley. He didn't even hide it. They were going to sell out to stop the run. Like that was,
yes.
They were going to, force Kyler Murray to the air and to beat them. And it seemed like they were up to the task. So.
Well, in the passing game, is to take away from it. We talked about in training camp the usage of Harrison and McBride, and it was very much the case. 11 of the 21 catches. Now, granted, Tyler completed passes to 9 different receivers, so he spread it out. But 11 of the 21 receptions were to McBride or Harrison. 15 of the 29 targets and 132 of the 163 yards came from McBride and Harrison.
And you and I talked about that before the season. That was the reality. It was going to run through McBride and Marvin Harrison this season.
Yeah, 100%. And a couple of takeaways. The Cardinals didn't turn the ball over. That was critical. Tyler was, you could say that Kyler played unevenly. But and the sack numbers look worse because he got sacked 5 times. 2 of them were stupid. 2 of them they drove me mad because they were the two Kyler plays where he ran out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage rather than throwing the ball away. And the other one, he slid before getting hit, and it was before the line of scrimmage. And so basically he sacked himself twice when he could have thrown the ball away. But the 3 other sacks looked bad. Now I will say that the one on the Alontae Taylor one where it was a 15-yard loss, I saw on X just the number of people say he's got to get rid of that ball. But like, how is he going to get rid of that ball when he's in the tackle box? He can't just throw it away. He can't. He was in the tackle box the entire time.
Well, and it was one of those situations where they thought they were going to get away with it with the play action, right? Like they thought that running a hard play action, but again, Staley had that schemed up perfectly where
they rushed 7.
Right, where
7.
But there was a play earlier in it. When you look at it, you see that they would bring an extra guy and just have him chase Murray on the play action, because their thought process was, I don't care, right? Like, I don't care what happens. We're just not going to allow him to play action boot and get out of the tackle box. So that was excellent by Staley and the Saints defense, and something that you wonder if more teams are going to do now. Like, they're going to say, okay, hand the ball off, right? We'll have 7 in the box. We'll leave 6 at the line of scrimmage to play the run and bring a free rusher to Kyler on the boot action and hand it off against 6 in the box. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Offensively, there were a couple of different wrinkles, and we saw that Trey Benson was going to, we were told that Benson was going to have a greater role in the offense this year. And you know how he did it? He completely replaced Amari DeMarcado. Benson is the 3rd down back. Now he spells Connor, but he completely bumped DeMarcado out of the rotation. And it was Benson in on those passing downs, which means he's progressed as a pass blocker. But I think that's how they're going to increase him without decreasing Connor, right? And so he'll still get the spells for Connor, but now he's also getting all the 3rd down, like all of those passing down things, so that he can. It's a way for him to increase his role without Connor decreasing his.
Yeah, and that was one of the question marks we had coming into it, right? Like, what was the snap count going to look like for the running backs? And when it was all said and done, yeah, James was out there for 43, 13 runs. Trey was out there for about half, 22, 8 runs. So that I think that's how it's going to be, that kind of 60 40, 65, 35 split, unless Trey's running real hot in the game, right? But for the most part, I think that's what it's going to be.
It was also interesting to see that they kept they dressed all 4 tight ends. They even they did a lot of 3 tight end. They had 1 4 tight end set.
Yeah.
And then defensively, what's that?
Vokalek got 3 snaps, like offensive snaps.
Yeah, that was fun to see. And then like they were planning on it. I think they were planning on an ugly game. And then you look defensively, and they talked about how they wanted to get Rabbit more playing time, and they did. They played a lot of nickel, even when it looked base, and it came at the expense of Akeem Davis-Gaither. And so they did a lot of 3 safeties. Like even in their base set, when they only had 2 cornerbacks, they went with 3 safeties. And I guess when you have a Buda Baker who can do linebacker things, and in fairness, Rabbit is kind of the same thing. You can get those guys to be physical and to be strong in the tackle game. And then we saw that it was Max Melton and Garrett Williams getting all the cornerback snaps, and Will came in as the number 3. Still got plenty of time. And that Baron Browning got the start over Zaven, and Browning played pretty well.
Yeah, and I thought the rotation was interesting. I mean, here's the first thing. It's always interesting to me when a team has such a poor defensive game, but then holds them to minimal points, right? Like they were just not able to consistently get off the field in situations. The other crazy thing was how did the Saints run not so many more, but 9 more plays in 7.5 less minutes of game time? Like all of those little things you look at and you go, okay, this was a Saints team that is not very good, as you stated, and the Cardinals kind of got away with a lot, right? Like,
Yeah.
And so that's what the interesting thing was for all of this, is that you had this defense that was on the field for 75 plays. Baron Browning 40, Zaven Collins 37. So, it was interesting how, I don't want to say little, but how little Will Johnson was on the field, right? Only 45 snaps in the game. I think people would be surprised to see that. Do you think maybe they're not super, I don't want to say confident, because I think that's wrong, but like that they don't want to put him in a position to play the run quite yet? Because like it was so heavily coverage snap based as opposed to his run defensive snaps.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and they use him. I think it. I don't think it's necessarily so much about him as that they trust. They like Garrett should be playing every down, and that Max should be playing every down. Maybe they're a little more versatile, and then and naturally because he's
he's a rookie as well, right?
Yeah, and so because he would come in nickel package, it's not that he's going to play in the nickel, because that's what Garrett does. Williams slides into the slot, but when by nature, because you are playing nickel, you are far more likely to be playing pass. If that makes any sense, that it's just by nature of that. But yeah, it was a case where the Saints, they ran more plays in less time, but they were also cheating at it too, because they ran a lot of hurry up. And
they ran a lot of hurry up, and they just nickel and dime things. But
yes,
so
that was partially because of the way the Cardinals played defense, because they knew they were going to get the ball out fast, because you had to protect Spencer Rattler, and so you had to get the ball out quickly. And so it was just, don't give it. Like Gannon says, don't give up anything over your head, and they survived that. And would we have liked to see them blow them out? Yeah. And ultimately, I convinced myself it was going to be a blowout, but it was a cover. They picked up a win. The end was scary, but ultimately, it wasn't. I mean, the Cardinals would have had a chance again. And so it's not like they were in danger of losing unless they would have decided to go for 2. Then that would have been something different. But they just basically they took care of business. They did what they needed to do. They didn't do it pretty, but they got to win. And that's what I mean. When you're on the road, especially in New Orleans, that's a team as bad as they are. They'd been winning. They'd won 6 straight season openers. It's hard to play on the road in week 1. The fan base is juiced because they haven't been beaten down by disappointment yet. And so, honestly, even though this wasn't aesthetically pleasing, it was acceptable. And you start with acceptable, and as the Cardinals go through this quote unquote light part of their schedule, if this is the only way they win, okay, then we're going to have to worry about later in the season. But worrying about week 1 on the road, when you are honestly, in terms of game planning, there were many unscouted looks that they only had to kind of prepare for from what they saw defensively and offensively. So it's not a bad thing. So coming up next on the Red Receiver Podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. Let's move on to talk about the players. Who are our standouts? Okay. Who was our standouts and who are our duds from that game that's coming up next on Red FC Red? We're back on the Rise of Seaward podcast. It's our Cardinals talk on the web. So yeah, what we need to do is talk about who stood out. I think number one, do we need to simply say that Will Johnson is probably our number one standout of the game? Just the 3 pass breakups. It would have been a 4th pass breakup / interception had they not flagged Max Melton for illegal contact on the other side of the field. He had that truck stick. Oh my gosh, that hit on Chris Olave in the backfield. He looked every bit of a star in the role that he had.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, again, I thought was excellent. Just put him in a position to be successful early and kind of go from there. The secondary as a whole, I thought looked really good. But the other guy I would shout out was Rabbit. I thought Rabbit had a great game. He's a guy that, again, they're being careful with. And that if we needed to see more, they're not going to do that yet, right? And again, I think that's okay. Like, you've got Buddha, you've got Jalen. Those are your guys. They're still your guys. They're still, elite level run defenders, tacklers. Let Rabbit kind of get into a role in a system and learn, and then grow from there, instead of being like, okay, we just need you to be the dudes right now, right?
Yeah, I thought it was good to see. Buddha had a fantastic game. He ended up with 10 tackles. He had that. Well, he and Jalen Thompson combined for that pass breakup in the end zone, that critical pass breakup. And Juwan Johnson, he's a good player. For him to lose that ball in the end zone, that was a big play. But it was a big moment, and one of their big players made a big play. That's like, if you're looking big picture, sure, it was an almost play, but you had at a critical part of the game, you had one of your best players make a play in the biggest moments. That's a sign of a good team. That's a sign of a good team. And so that if we look at that, that is a definite positive for that.
It is, and that's what we're kind of waiting, or not waiting, but enjoying this portion of it, right? Like, the small growth that we're seeing from this group, right? Especially, in year 3, we've talked ad nauseum about it, like just taking that next step as a team. But we've also talked about, like, it's weird, and we don't need to rehash the past too much, but like, it's weird that what happens when you invest early in premium positions like corner, right? Like that, and this isn't to take anything away from Rabbit, because I think Rabbit's going to be a very excellent player, but it's odd to me that the past regime never realized that you can get a player like Rabbit in round 4 or 5, whatever they got him, right? But you can't, and you rarely get a Will Johnson in round 4 or 5. You rarely get
Marco Wilson.
I know, a Max Melton in round. Like, that's what was always weird to me, is that they just never understood that. And again, the only reason this regime got Garrett Williams in round 3 is because he had a torn ACL.
Yeah. Well, honestly, Garrett Williams fell because of the torn ACL. Will Johnson, he fell because of supposed longevity concerns. Yeah, that's pretty good. Another play, honestly, I thought the PFF grade, which I don't really like PFF grades because it doesn't tell me much. Especially when you look at and say someone who played this small role, they have a really high PFF grade, but they had like 10 snaps. I'm like, really? Yeah, there's context. I thought Max Melton played really well. Did he have the one flag? Yes. I thought Melton played well, and that's important to see. That's important to see from their second round pick from a year ago, especially when Starr got hurt and lost for season. Sean Murphy Bunting's out for the season. But to see Williams play well, to see Max play well, to see Will Johnson play well, that's just all of that are great positives. I also thought that Trey Benson, I liked the increased role and how he did in that 52-yard run. That isn't it. Honestly, isn't that exactly the type of thing that Benson offers? He's got now he's nearly as big as Connor now because he put on weight, but he has that breakaway speed that and the footwork to be able to bust those.
Yeah, and he's got to be able to run like he did if the run blocking is going to be that bad. I mean, there's just really no way around it. So to see him, get out of those arm tackles this year and be able to turn the corner and utilize that speed, even though he got hawked down by a defensive end, we won't talk about that too much. It was impressive. I thought we need to shout out, Paris Johnson. He's starting on that elite trajectory that we've discussed with him, right? Like this performance was, again, I don't want to say like against too bad of an opponent, but it was just such a strong performance.
And Baron Browning showed some juice. That was good to see. And the key with him, he's got to stay healthy. That's what's kind of derailed his last couple of seasons were his injuries. But other than that, what was, if any, I think with our duds, who were the ones that we didn't, who kind of stepped back? And I think number one, I mean, Evan Brown, right, who had 2 penalties all last season and was really, really consistent, and he was bad. He was bad against the Saints.
I think both the guards were borderline terrible, and that's unfortunate because Isaiah Adams had such a strong camp. We always joke around about it, right? Like, oh, is it the Cardinals defensive line or is it the Cardinals offensive line that's bad? And right now it's neither, but this was a really, really poor game for both guys. Evan Brown and Isaiah Adams both had penalties. Both did not move people in the run game, which is what their job genuinely is. Like, at the end of the day, that's all that's really required of them. The last one, again, I'm going to be brief with this because I feel like he's not in shape at all, but Darius Robinson was just kind of there, right? Like, didn't have an impact, seemed to get moved a little too easily. But it's game one. We'll chalk it up to the entire defensive line being out of shape. And in Dante Still's case, dealing with that injury that he had, potentially would have missed the game with, and probably a lot of guys would have missed the game, right? So, all of that, I think you look at and you go, okay, not ideal, but we can improve from there.
Sounds good. Coming up next on the Rise of C-Red podcast, Bizarre Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's move on to our final segment, and that's our concerns, and then just a little bit what we saw in the NFC West. That's coming next on Rise of C-Red. We're back on the Rise of C-Red podcast, Bizarre Cardinals Talk on the Web. We kind of talked about the concerns, right? But the things that we have to worry about, right, is number one, the guard play, right? We have to now wonder that the struggles in the run game will carry over from week to week, or if the pressure, because we felt that the offensive line has been pretty good. Was that Brandon Staley's game plan, or is there a concern with the offensive line interior?
Yeah, and that's the question mark, right? Like, is that going to be something that we're going to have to watch moving forward? I think you chalk it up to week one, a bad performance week one. It was just unfortunate. They attacked the guards. They went after them, and the guards weren't up to the task. And you go, okay, that was week one. Let's see what happens moving forward. In the end, I don't think that you can ever be concerned, if that makes sense. Like, you never come out of this week and go, oh, I'm really concerned about this, right? Like, but you do have things that you're like, hey, these are things we got to watch moving forward, and
276 yards of offense. They're not going to win many games if they only do that.
No, but I also thought that there were some things that they were overly conservative with
Yeah.
in the game. And you always, like I said, it was almost like they were like, hey, let's just get out of this healthy and with a win. And that's kind of what they did. I mean, you look at that after the first drive, right? Which in and of itself was kind of the thing, right? 3 yards, pass to Trey McBride for 11 yards. And so you're like, okay. And then the next play, they run that boot action and Kyler Murray gets sacked literally on that play, and so then it's second 21 and they basically surrendered. They're like, we'll just punt. And I get it. Like you're looking at it and going,
I love those second and super long, third and super long draw plays.
Yeah. And so then they come out, they score, right? Or they kick a field goal, right? And then they get a stop, and then they then they give up the touchdown, that's right. But then they come out and they score, and then they come out again, they score again, and you're like, okay, well, it is what it is. And then they get a stop to start the third quarter, and they go down and kick another field goal, and you're like, okay, they're just moving the ball at will. And so, you look at all of that and you go, they probably just kind of went into cruise control. Probably shouldn't have. Probably was not the best idea, but they didn't do anything too aggressively, and that's what comes of it. But again, I just look at all of it as a whole, and you say, okay, like you said, running game, definitely something to watch. This is the first year without Clayton Adams, right? So how is this going to look now? Was it more Adams or is it Drew Petzing? And so that's one thing to watch. And then, so just little things like that. That's kind of how you look at it. And then you go, okay, can their wide receivers get separation? I mean, Michael Wilson was one of the worst separators in the league in this game, in week 1.
Yeah, he did not. He did not look good in that sense. Now, around the NFL, I will say this: 49ers play the Saints this next week. They don't have George Kittle. They might not have Brock Purdy. Juwan Jennings is banged up. The Saints might beat the 49ers if they play the way they did against the Cardinals.
Yeah, and you look at it, the Panthers, didn't look good in their game, and then like you said, you get a hurting. I mean, Brock Purdy may not play, right?
It might be Mac Jones.
Right. And so you look at it and those, it's just, it makes it difficult, man. Like it just makes it really, really difficult to even kind of go, okay, like how does it work out? Like where are they fitting into all of this and things of that nature? And the 49ers could be, a 1-win team coming into their matchup with the Cardinals in week 4. I still expect them to be fine, right? Like not
yeah. But it's funny to see, what did the 49ers have issues with last year was injuries. They can't avoid it. Right now, they keep having the injury bug. Brandon Ayuk's still out. Juwan Jennings got hurt. George Kittle's going to be out. He just was put on injured reserve. Brock Purdy's hurt. They cannot stay healthy. Brock Purdy threw 2 interceptions in that game. Yes, he had threw the touchdown pass to Jake Tunges late in the game. Seattle's defense looked really good. And then Sam Darnold fumbled in the red zone at the end of the game. And so you And he wasn't spectacular. He only had 150 yards passing. The Seahawks only had 230 total yards of offense, so their offense sputtered. 49ers, I think what saved the Seattle's defense was the 2 interceptions, because San Francisco had nearly 400 yards of offense. And I guess that's going to, that now that Brock Purdy's paid, can he still be efficient? Can he avoid the turnovers? Can they do the things that they need to Christian McCaffrey? Can he handle the load? He had 31 touches in week 1. Can he sustain that with his health? But here's the thing. Los Angeles, that is now 5 of their last 6 regular season games. They haven't allowed 10 points.
Right. And they look like the class of the NFC West still. This looks like it's still the Rams division to lose, especially with how well their defense is playing. The Seahawks, the Seahawks 49ers game is a tough one, don't you kind of think? Because neither team really looked impressive.
No. Yeah. It's interesting because you looked at the Seahawks picked off Purdy twice, but they gave up almost 400 yards, so that defense was supposed to be good. Darnold looks like a step down of Geno Smith, which we figured was the case. Like, we thought at least at worst or at best that he was not an upgrade over Smith. He was just a younger quarterback to do the same type of things that Geno Smith did. The defense wasn't as good as what you would have imagined, or San Francisco's offense was simply better, but then they lost. They ended up losing Kittle, and that's huge. They already are down Ayuk. Jennings got hurt. Ricky Pearsall had a good game. He had 4 catches for 108 yards, and McCaffrey, basically it was McCaffrey and Pearsall. And is that sustainable for what they've got going forward, especially if Brock Purdy has to miss any time beyond this week, if that? Because the way that Kyle Shanahan talked, that Purdy might not be able to practice, that was almost conceding the fact that Mac Jones is going to start in New Orleans.
Right, and that's, people are already joking about the worst quarterback matchup of the season in week 2 after one of the best games of the season in week 1 between the Bills and the Ravens, right?
Oh my gosh, what a game. What a game. So in terms of the NFC West, 3-1, the Seahawks are the only ones with the loss. Coming up in week 2, the Cardinals play at home against the Panthers. We'll talk more about that game later this week. I will also have Jared Feinberg, who came on to the podcast during the summer for the opponent preview. He will join me again this week. The 49ers play the Saints on the road. Then the Rams and the Seahawks are also on the road against the Titans, and I can't remember who else that was. I wrote that down somewhere. Steelers. Here's the thing. The Seahawks could be 0-2, and then they play. Who does Seattle play? They play the Saints in Seattle, so they'll win that game. They might be 1-2 coming into that game on Thursday night in week 4, and having lost their first 2 games. In fact, I'm going to predict that if I think the 49ers lose this week. I think they're going to get upset, and I think that the Seahawks will lose, and the Rams play the Titans. So I don't think there's going to be any problem with that one. No. Oh wait, nope. Then week 2. The Rams, where are the Rams? They play the Titans on the road. So, yeah, they'll handle Cam Ward. Good luck with that. Ooh, good luck with that, Cam Ward, getting to play the Broncos in week 1 and the Rams in week 2 defensively. Yeesh. Right. Good luck for that kid. Yeah, and with that, anything else that worth bringing up?
No, I mean, this is just one of those games where you go, okay, good job, that was enough to get a win. Let's see an improvement moving forward, right?
Sounds good. And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise Up C Red podcast. Best ever Cardinals talk on the way. This episode 695. We got 2 shows coming up this week. I'll have Jared Feinberg on, like I said, for opponent preview, and Seth and I will be back later this week too for our picks, predictions, and preview. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up Red C, be Red C Red, and of course, Rise up C Red.
Roll!